All right, how about you?
Carl, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Did you bring the posters with you? Okay. So I wanted to show
Hello, everybody.
Joanne.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Just make sure this is working correctly. Thanks for coming out this evening, and thank you to the Maple Street School for hosting us this afternoon. My name is Michael Allen with Regrowth Planning, and I'm joined today by Emily Gardner with Saratoga Associates. Together, our team is working on helping the town update the town plan for the town of Manchester. And we're having today's workshop today as part 2 of a 3-part series after our visiting workshop last month. Today we have the housing workshop, and then that will be followed later this month, April 23rd, April 29th, for our economic development meeting at Burton Academy at the Roland Center. So, as part of this, we've been in a phase right now where we're doing public outreach and trying to get some input from folks on what they feel are important issues. We've been conducting a number of surveys, including our visioning survey, our school and family survey, and our workforce and employer survey to get some different perspectives on some issues around town. And as of today, I believe we've received about a little over 200 responses on our visioning survey, about 159 on the school and family survey, and another 93 on the local workforce and employer survey. I was hoping for slightly bigger numbers, but we're just at this point looking for general input to help guide and steer the questions that we want to ask. So as an overall, just the survey input that we've been getting, I want to review some of the sort of housing related. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Ha. Review some of the housing related survey responses that we've gotten. For example, in the visioning survey, we asked how important are each of the following issues for folks to rate them on a scale of 1 to 7. The first most highly ranked issue was attracting desired local businesses and jobs, and that was followed in a close second place by housing affordability and availability. So housing was a pretty high topic, or a high demand topic identified in that question. We also asked folks as a follow-up, what type of housing do you feel is needed? And many folks wrote in the idea of more affordable housing, more diversity types of housing, such as rental housing, more workforce housing, and apartments, that sort of thing. And then in the local workforce survey, when we asked employees, what's the primary reason that you live outside of the town where you work, because many of the employees live outside of Manchester. Tied for second place after it's where I already lived, tied for second place with driving distances reasonable was there's lack of affordable housing options there. Also in the local workforce survey, we asked folks, have you ever considered moving closer to where you work in Manchester? 60% said no, 40% said yes. So of the people that said no, we asked them as a follow-up, okay, well, why not? Why haven't you considered that? And people's write-in answers effectively fell into 4 different buckets of responses. The first most popular answer being it was just too expensive. That was followed by they prefer their current location, or they own their own home, or they live with family already, or they're young, followed by it's close enough it doesn't matter. So the top answer being that the affordability was the primary concern. Also in the local workforce survey, we asked, yes?
I don't believe our Zoom friends are seeing this.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Please hold. I forgot to press the rest of the share button. hopefully, can they see now, do we think?
Says you have paused screen share.
Okay, let me try one more thing.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Well, I'm glad we figured that out in the first 5 minutes and not 30 minutes. Okay. So back to our local workforce survey. We asked how likely are you to move to Manchester if reasonable housing options were available. 49% indicated they would be likely or very likely to relocate to Manchester. 31% saying indicating they would be unlikely or very unlikely to. So it's general support of that being an issue in keeping and what's keeping them from moving to this area. When asking the local employers, how difficult was it for you to find qualified employees last year in 2025, a number of folks indicated that it was either somewhat difficult, or very difficult, indicating that there was some difficulty for them in finding employees. And when we asked them, why do you think there was this difficulty, basically tied for the top two results were the area lacks interest in candidates, followed by a lack of local housing options. Then also in the local employer survey, we asked folks, how much might it benefit your business to have your employees live more locally in Manchester rather than commuting long distances? 81% felt that there was some benefit to that, between a great deal, a lot, a moderate amount, or a little. 19% said that would be none at all, no benefit at all. And then lastly, among our sample of survey results, how many additional employees would you ideally have for your current operations? Unfortunately, only 16 business owners answered this, so it's not very statistically meaningful. However, of those 16, about half of them indicated they would want to be hiring between 1 and 3 or 4 to 6 more employees. So about half of them indicated they would be interested in hiring more staff. So as part of our housing discussion today, I think that we've generally shown that there is a need, that this issue of housing is one that covers a lot of issues, not just in terms of livability, but in terms of how it can impact our local businesses and our local economy. And the community has identified a need, not just in housing availability, but housing affordability, as well as the diversity of housing types that we have to choose from. And as far as a town plan goes, these are just the things we need to work on. And from a town plan perspective, right now we could say, okay, we have everything we need. We've identified this is something we need to work on. We can sit down right now and we can write in our town plan, okay, we need to work on providing some more housing, encouraging housing growth and development and diversity, and maybe set some goals and so forth, and we would be done. We would have written that part of the town plan and effectively met the basic requirements of what we need to do. But I don't feel like we should end there. I'd like to take it a little bit further. I'd like to have a conversation about how this might work, about where is housing going to go, how big might it be, and if we have time toward the end of the presentation, we might even get into what it might look like, but I'm not sure we'll be able to get through all of that. So the reason I'm asking folks to participate in this sort of live polling exercise is we want to try and get some feedback. I'd like to get some ideas from folks on how they feel about different housing ideas. Because I'd like to come out of this at the end of the day, the end of tonight, and as we get into the plan, I'd like to come out of this with a better understanding of what the local concerns are for housing regarding not just location and sizes, but also learn what gets more public support. Oftentimes a lot of housing options are frustrated because they run into a lot of public opposition. And I'd like to understand what the concerns are in various situations so that maybe we can adapt and adjust and prepare to address those up front and try and limit some of the downsides of that. And also, hopefully, develop some general strategies that we can put into the plan about how we can address some of these things and improve the chances that we can have successful implementation. So, that is why we're doing some of the live polling exercises today. I find it useful, usually in larger crowds than this, but I find it useful to get a lot of input from everybody very quickly without everybody taking turns to speak. But what we're going to do is go through a series of options. I'm going to ask for input, and then we'll take a break every now and again and just have a general discussion about everything we just covered. So that's the idea. Yes?
Can you go back a few slides to the one that had the word affordability on it?
Did I spell affordability wrong?
No? There, that's good enough. I don't think that the people that I talk to, there's not a unified definition
Of affordable.
of affordable.
Correct.
So someone sent me a property that closed sometime this week or last week, and they said, this is affordable. And it closed for $550,000.
Right.
And to me, if I had to buy a house today, I couldn't afford that.
Right.
So I guess I'm asking, since you're leading this conversation, what is the definition of affordable housing? There's a term that gets thrown around called workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need, or at least I do, before we go down this road of a conversation on housing, to have a clear understanding of what is meant by workforce and affordable housing.
Okay. I feel that the definition of affordability is a very relative one, considering everyone's current lifestyle and what they do and so forth. So my goal in this is to try and improve the diversity of types of housing we get, improve the ranges of the types of housing we get, and maybe identify some ways that we can provide or encourage the type of housing that's going to be maybe smaller, more compact, more efficient, that it's going to have lower prices by its nature and its efficiency.
So the people that identified in the survey that they would want to live in Manchester if they could afford to,
Yes.
does that mean they were looking at $1 million houses or $100,000 houses?
I don't know. I defined it as if what they felt was reasonable.
Because okay.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yes, basically, I think the salaries in Manchester for most of the work, in restaurants, in whatever, is $20 an hour or $25 an hour with no benefits.
Right.
So basically, it's very difficult to even afford a down payment on a house, let alone afford a house. If your medium income house now, I think, is ranked at $400,000, that's out of the question.
Right.
There's one other thing I'd like to bring to your attention. There's a place on 7A. It's a condo. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's got maybe 20 condos in back of it. It was
The Inn at Willow Pond?
Willow Pond.
Yes.
I know it would cost $3 million to put everything right in Willow Pond, but it would have quite a bit of low-cost housing. It would have a meeting house. It could attract a lot of young people to live there. It might be a wonderful opportunity.
Yes. Okay. So any other, before we continue?
I just
Yes.
want to say about affordability. My understanding is that you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your income.
That is one definition,
So-
yes.
you know, it could be $1 million.
But everybody makes
but
different
everybody
incomes.
makes it, so it's 30% of your income.
Yes, well, that's the
So-
cap that we
Yeah.
should try and avoid. That is a common thing. But I think rather than trying to aim for a particular amount, what I feel that our goal is more to increase the different types and arrangements, styles, sizes, so we have more diversity, and it's not just all single-family homes on 2-acre lots, because those are going to sell for
Right, but
$600,000.
regardless, it's still 30% of your income.
Yes.
No matter what, you could make $1 million, you can afford, your affordability is higher
Yes,
than a $30,000 person, his affordability is less. So
Correct.
I think if we keep that in mind, it can help
Okay.
define that.
okay.
They pay $20 an hour. You don't have a $30,000 income.
So, if folks haven't already done so, I was hoping that they could connect their phones to our system. Basically, it allows you to vote on your phones. If you haven't already, you can scan this QR code with your phone, or optionally, go to slido.com and enter that code. If folks need, we have little handy reference cards which were at the sign-in table. And I'll give folks a moment to sign into that. Basically, this will allow us to, as the slides progress, questions up on the screen will also appear on your phone, and you'll have the option to vote on some different options. And just to start out, we're going to start out with a sample question, just as like a test, an icebreaker, if you will. It won't be anything too tough. I'm actually hoping you guys can help me settle a dispute I have with my kids. And if folks need, the Wi-Fi network here is MapleGuest, and the password is Moose 2021. They apparently haven't updated their Wi-Fi password in a while, but this might sponsor that to happen. So as folks start to get connected in, raise your hand if you're having any issues or problems. And for those of you who don't have some smartphone or tablet device, whatever, I might just query you individually just to let us know what you think, because I still want to get your input. Our icebreakers like test question right now is which food is best, and I need you guys to prove me right to my kids. Is it tacos, pizza, or taco pizza? Now the idea here is you can select and rank them in order of preference. So the first one you select is the best, the second one is the second best.
Excuse me.
And the third is, yes.
They're not showing up.
It says no active
Yeah.
polls at this moment.
It will
Yes,
start
we
as
will.
soon as I switch the
Oh,
slide forward.
okay.
Sorry, thank
Sorry.
you for letting me know, yes. So, if we move
There we go.
forward,
Okay,
it
yeah.
should now appear on your screens. The first one you select is your first choice, second is second, and third is third, and it should rank them. And there. See? Thank you. I just need to take a screenshot of this. I'm going home now. Okay, so that gives you a general idea how this works. It should be pretty simple. And after this point, the questions will get harder. So,
I have a question.
yes,
Are people at home voting as well, or just
they
folks
can.
in the room?
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Thank you. The folks that, how many folks do we have on Zoom?
We have 4 extra folks on Zoom, and
Okay.
I can share the address and the code with them. So.
Okay. Yeah, folks on Zoom have the ability to also vote as well on this using your computer or phone at home. So, I forgot to mention that. Thank you. So, let's get started. For the purposes of this first discussion, I want to break up locations around Manchester into kind of 3 simple areas, just for the sake of simplicity, if you will. So, if we're looking at a map of the entire area of Manchester, there's one core area in the middle, which we'll zoom in on in a second, which I call, let's say, the core, the downtown. It really represents the central downtown area where most of our commercial businesses and activity occurs. I'm just calling that, for the sake of this discussion, Zone 1. Zone 2 is what I'm referring to as like the edges around that. It's really the commercially developed zoning districts that are just outside of that core, and I'll zoom in on these areas in a minute so you can get a better look at them, but I want to kind of put this all into perspective. And then Zone 3 is everything outside of that, what I'm calling the more rural or outskirt areas of town. And for the purposes of talking about housing locations, I want to try and break it down into these kind of 3 areas, because I think each area is a little bit different, and we'll go into that a little bit. So Zone 1, and I need to move that little thing because it's in the way here. Zone 1 is seen right here on the map. So right here in the center, you have Malfunction Junction near Langway or where it used to be Hand Chevrolet. It extends down to the south to the village line right by Shaw's Supermarket. It extends north up Bonnet Street to about the river. There's a little bridge crossing. It extends east to about Barnumville Road. And then it also extends east down Depot Street to about where RK Miles is. That's the general extent of it. Yes?
Does that follow the water and sewer systems?
No, it's smaller than the water and sewer systems. So when we get into Zone 2, that starts to encompass the outskirts of that. So
But everything in this.
everything in here is water and sewer. Yes. So that's essentially Zone 1. That's kind of the zone I want to talk about first. But so now if we zoom out a little bit, that's Zone 1. The light gray area that you see to the southwest of that is the village area, which is technically outside of our jurisdiction for the purposes of this plan. But Zone 2 then surrounds that. It goes up North Main Street up to about Riley Rink, just short of North Road, and it extends east a little bit farther along Barnumville Road and south down Richville Road down to about the Airport Road. So that's the general extent of Zone 2. And then, as I mentioned, Zone 3 is pretty much everything outside of that. And when we talk about different types of housing in different areas of town, I want to get a sense from folks on where they feel is more appropriate for different types of housing, as far as whether you feel it's better in Zone 1, 2, or 3, or which is more appropriate. So in looking at these 3 zones right now, I want to ask folks, which zone do you feel is most appropriate to be adding new rental apartments, for example? In Zone 1, 2, or 3, again, you can rank these like you did with the pizza correctly. You can rank these in order of preference. So, yes?
You say apartments, are we talking 2 stories, 3 stories, what are you talking?
Well, we're going to get into the height and size later, but right now we're just saying in general we're rental apartments. So that's the general idea.
And did you say Zone 2 also has water and sewer through it, or not?
Yes, for most of Zone 2 has water and sewer as well.
Okay.
Yes.
What does Zone 3 have?
Nothing.
It doesn't have water or sewer, and that's part of the reason why I want
It has some
to
water.
deal with
It has
it
water.
separately. But
It has,
Yeah.
some of it has water. so-
Right.
Yeah.
So, looking at this right now, so far, folks generally feel Zone 1 looks like a little bit more appropriate for housing that's rental apartment based, followed by Zone 2 and Zone 3. Okay.
Can someone clarify, when we talk about Manchester having town septic or town sewers,
Mhm.
and I ask this because I'm on a private septic system. I don't know, like, what Manchester's town system is. I don't know where it's located, I don't know. So like, is it like, I just recently drove through Springfield, Vermont, so they have a huge water treatment, wastewater treatment facility.
Yep,
Is that what Manchester has?
yes.
Tell her where it is.
Like all the individual cement tanks?
It's down, basically down Richfield Road near where Union Ave comes down the hill. It's hidden down there.
So it's
So,
like,
and it's
not a-
collecting from a lot of this area. I'm not pointing to the map right now. It's collecting from many of the areas around Zone 2.
So the main sections of town that are currently serviced by the sewer encompass from right where Stewart's is, Stewart's gas station,
By Ways Lane, right?
by Ways Lane. It goes down through the center, like anything that's on Depot Street. It ends currently right before you get to the tree property, so where Green Mountain Veterinary Hospital is.
Right.
It also services Ridgeville Road and parts of East Manchester Road into where the Haynes Manor Brook, Bromley Brook is.
Right.
And it also includes Green Mountain Estates. And I think that,
We'll probably be going farther down Ridgeville Road
Right.
at some point, but yes.
Is it at Cass Terrace?
it is not at Cass Terrace. There was a plan to potentially bring it down to Cass Terrace. Let me also mention that it also goes all the way to essentially the town offices on Route 7A from the center of town. And includes some areas in Highland, the depot area as well.
Yes.
But yeah, there's two large tanks or
And
treatment
it's-
facility off of Union Street headed south just before you go up the hill.
And it extends up North Main Street, just up to basically around the town offices,
Yeah.
which was the latest extension, if I remember correctly.
And is there a capacity issue?
No,
Okay.
no.
Do we have that in writing?
That there's not a capacity issue?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Yes, we do.
I thought Eric Severance at one point
What
said
about
we
the
were
aging of the
maximum.
infrastructure itself?
So when we were discussing the potential of developments on Ridgeville Road, we were looking specifically at the pump station and the capacity of that entire facility. And after, we're not even close to 50% capacity on that pump station in particular.
On that particular
Yeah,
pump station.
but that's where any growth that currently would go. So we definitely have the capacity.
Okay.
What's
Thank
the
you.
age of the facility?
I don't know specifically.
I don't know.
Uh, It was built, I want to say, in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
Does it
Actually, I can tell you exactly when it was built. It was actually the late 70s, because my grandfather was working there, and he died before it actually opened.
Does it need an upgrade?
No, it's
Not
very well
right now.
maintained.
And this is not where Eric Severance works.
Yes, it is.
This is where
Eric,
Severance
yes.
works at.
Yes.
Okay, good enough. Check it out.
Okay. Yes.
I think it would be helpful for people to know, especially with the water and sewer, how the zoning has changed over the last 7-8 years in terms of density in those areas that are serviced by sewer and water. I think that might impact some of the decisions people are making through your queries.
Okay.
That's why I was asking if you had an outline of what the water and sewer district actually, the land that was served there, so that we had a visual, for instance, do people know
Well, I
what
was trying
M4
to
is or
simplify
M10?
things by just talking about these zones because the water and sewer districts don't necessarily align, and these boundaries are really based on the different zoning districts and what you can do, and these represent generally denser zoning districts. They would also, coincidentally or not coincidentally, coincide with some future development opportunities that would come from any Act 250 exclusions. So these would be areas, Zone 2 in particular would be an area where housing would probably be very likely to be pursued. So that's why I wanted to include that. But I didn't want to confuse and complicate the issues by showing where there was water but not sewer and vice versa. But your point about how the zoning has evolved over time is a good one, and we're actually going to get into one of those questions a little bit later. So I think the next question I was asking here was, which zone do you feel is the most appropriate to add new senior housing? Previously, we had asked about rental apartment sort of housing. Now this question is asking about senior housing, because we also feel that that is going to be something that's needed. I don't know how many folks, can you tell, Emily, how many folks have already
26.
voted?
26.
26. I didn't get a head count. Okay. So I just cleared it up.
We got 17 responses, 20 responses, 22.
It's not letting me send my response.
Oh,
Probably already did it.
maybe I took too long. I apologize. So, okay. Because when we think about senior housing, we often want it to be in proximity where you can still have maybe some walkability into town and to area services, but not necessarily right smack dab in the middle of town. I was curious to see how people felt about that. And finally, the third option on this is asking which zone do you feel is the most appropriate to add, say, new starter homes. And I know that might be a vague term, but I'm thinking of fairly small new homes that a young family might be able to afford or buy to buy their first home, start their family, and so forth. And give everyone a moment to give their thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
I can't participate in this question.
Because of technical issues, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just keep hammering the button.
Yeah, just give it a second.
Just keep hammering it. It's all the feet, everybody feeding
Yeah,
in at
doing it
once.
at the same
Okay.
time.
Yeah, it won't hold my answer.
Okay. Okay, well, that's the end of the ranked choice questions, I believe, so maybe that is part of the complexity that's causing some of the issues. So, zone 2, edges, 3, outlying areas, and the core being third. Okay. Not terribly surprising. Okay. For comparison, when we asked in the employee survey of folks that live outside of Manchester but work there, if they were to move to Manchester, how desirable would each of those 3 general areas be? The most popular answer was the edges or outskirts of the downtown and village, followed by the outlying rural areas, and then the last least popular answer was the downtown area, the downtown core area. So it was interesting. So now, taking a look at zone 1, I want to dive into some potential design scenarios for hypothetical discussion. Before we continue, I want to get, do you guys have any thoughts, comments on where we are right now in the conversation? Do you have any questions? Folks? Yes, sir.
Can we get a copy of this information?
The presentation?
Yes.
Yes. I plan to have a copy of the presentation on our webpage tomorrow, and then hopefully in the next day or two get a copy of the results up there too, so everyone can see what the results of the polls are, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And then also hopefully if we've done everything correctly technologically, we should also have a video recording of this on the project website tomorrow also. So hopefully we can catch it from all angles. So I want to take a moment to talk about Zone 1 in particular and a couple of design scenarios. I define Zone 1 as the downtown, particularly because of certain characteristics that it has. Notably, it has high visibility. Any development that's going to happen in this area is probably going to be very visible, highly visible to folks driving around and so forth. It has high walkability, it has water and sewer, and because of these reasons, probably a mixed-use development scenario is the most appropriate, I feel, from a standpoint of having commercial and residential together in the same building, because it takes the best advantage of that. So I want to go through 3 example concept sites for the purposes of having some discussion on this, and I want to emphasize these are theoretical concepts for sites that I've randomly chosen because I felt that they might be good examples of what you can and can't do. These are not real proposals. This is just for discussion purposes. The sites were chosen to demonstrate some different ideas conceptually, and I felt it was important to show this happening on specific sites that people all know and are familiar with, so you can feel it. Having a conversation about a theoretical proposal you don't know where it is a lot more difficult. So I felt that this might make things more tangible and real. But I don't want anyone to think any of this is going to happen. I haven't even spoken to the property owners of any of these properties to find out what they're doing or anything. So, also, I'm using to kind of illustrate concepts, what I call these styrofoam models. They're designed that way on purpose, not to have any details or materials or colors, so I don't want folks to get too distracted by what they look like, and I want it to be more a conversation about the size and scale of what it might look like. So we can talk about it that way. So, on to concept site 1, this is Batkill Plaza. Most of you are probably very familiar with it. It's across the street from Little Rooster Cafe, up on Main Street. It's home to right now, I believe, just the Gap, and that's about it, because most of it is vacant. If we look at the site, it's about 2.5 acres, just on Main Street, just down or up the hill from Malfunction Junction. It has ample parking throughout the back. It has very nice green space and lawn in the front, and it has this signature older building in front, which, if memory serves, I think predated the development. I think they built around it, if I remember. So that has a sort of a unique element. Looking at the building behind that building, they have about 13,000 square feet of commercial, divided up into 3 tenant spaces. Very large space. It's very difficult, or it's much harder to fill that retail space because they're so large. And right now, that's why I think 2/3 of it is vacant right now. So the idea with this would be to redevelop, keeping the house in front that's been there, redeveloping the building that's behind it, instead of being a single-use commercial building, because keep in mind, this site during the day might have some activity, but at night it's completely empty, the parking lot's empty, there's nobody living there, it's not accomplishing anything. So it's, in my view, it's underutilized. It could be doing more for us as a community. So as a concept of how we can address this issue is to redevelop the building in back to be both ground floor retail, but smaller retail units. So it's not 3 big 4,000 square foot spaces, it's maybe a dozen 1,000 square foot spaces that might be more attractive to a small local business that wants to open up a store. Then above that, opening up apartments. The idea could look something like this. This would be 13,000 square feet of commercial space, the same amount that they have right now, in addition to a number of apartments that I can't see because it's covered up by the closed captioning. I don't remember what the number is. I will check that. I think it's about 16 apartments?
15, very close.
Okay, about 15 apartments, ranging from 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet, I think is what I based the calculations on. So I wanted to get a feel from folks And the next slide, how do you feel about the sort of the overall scale and massing of this redevelopment? If something like this were to be proposed, how would you feel about it? Would you really dislike it, or would you like it? We've given a rating scale based on emoji happy faces to make it simple. Yes, ma'am?
Why not put apartments downstairs too?
Well, this way we still are trying to support some local business. We could do the apartments downstairs,
Good location.
possibly. I'm trying to get a dual use of both commercial revenue as well as trying to address our housing. The housing income, this could potentially be more, lucrative for the developer, because now they are making more money from the property, and it would be potentially helping to address some of our housing issues. So,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
So on that location, you didn't tell us, are you going to expand any kind of green space behind it? Because if I'm moving into an apartment, that green space on the main street, even though I'm there after hours, would not really appeal to me.
Okay.
Would there be green space in the back?
I did not get into the site planning
Okay.
of this,
Scared.
but hypothetically, in this hypothetical scenario, I don't think there would be much room. We would be pushing the limits of parking, and it's up against a retaining wall. You can't expand the parking because it's a very steep slope in that scenario. But it's good to know that the green space behind the building is something. I was interested in maintaining the green space in front of the building because I felt in that context it felt right for Manchester, and it created a nice attractive front lawn, and it creates a distance for people, and so.
Well, it does. That does. But what I'm saying is that's kind of the appeal to the town, the way we look at it now. But what I'm saying is if you're changing it and you're wanting people to live there, I think you need to think about some green space that they can actually get outside.
Actually sit outside
Sit
on the
outside.
lawn?
You're not going to sit outside on the front there because people are going to then complain. People are hanging out on the main street.
Hanging out in front of the stores. Right, okay, that's a good point. Yes, sir.
I believe that property on the previous slide that showed that it had an ample amount of lot space where you could do something like that on the back side of it, so it's not necessarily on that main.
You guys are surprising me. I wasn't expecting some of these comments. Okay, this is good. I'm going to go back. I don't think I lose any results here if I go backward to the. So yeah, it is quite a lot of parking back there.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something you could do. I was designing this basically using the whole.
Okay.
The whole enchilada, basically it's like a U shape. I flipped it so it was creating actually 3 buildings, one here, and one in back. I'm not sure you could tell from the image, but it was creating a courtyard around the old building, and you could walk between the buildings, and it was very pretty. That was the idea. But I hear your point about maybe there needs to be some more personal residential green space. Yes?
So another follow-up question up to this: what type of apartment use is this? Are we thinking like downtown folks that work at local shops? Are we thinking retired folks? Or what is the mindset behind this, or is it just the concept of apartments?
I basically looked at a series of new floor plans for different apartments that have been built in the region in the last several years, and took some of those floor plans and calculated out, okay, we could fit 750 square foot units and however many 1,200 square foot units in this arrangement. That was the extent to what I did, just to kind of give it a basic reality. Mm-hmm. I don't know who is going to live there. They're all upstairs, so probably this would be
younger
people
with 750 square feet. That's
yeah,
a tiny home.
Yeah.
So, these would be starter apartments or retired apartments.
Right. I apologize that the closed captioning is covering up my text on the bottom. Do we have any comments on Zoom? Okay. Well, the folks from Zoom, if you didn't already know, feel free to, if you want to chime in with any comments or questions, you can type it in the chat, and we'll try and weave you guys in. So, we just gained somebody or lost somebody. So, good to know. General consensus was generally favorable on that. I guarantee you, I'm going to show you some designs you're not going to like, but we'll get to those in a minute. So now with this in mind, the next question I want to ask is, what concerns might you have with something like this? Again, it's a hypothetical or theoretical, but what concerns might you have in terms of the building size, scale, the residential density, parking, traffic, noise, environmental, other, or none? Yes.
I haven't been a part of any conversations. It's been a while since I've been on the housing task force. But I do, and I think, I can't remember the person's name, but I think Habitat is here tonight, right? Yay. So my question, comment is, so it's great that we're considering building apartments, building houses, building accessory dwelling units. The conversation is happening. Hopefully it will translate into actionable results. And my question is, is the object of housing to get people into a house, into an apartment, into a condo? Or is there, to accompany that conversation, a way to also transition that rental component into ownership?
Yes,
Because,
yes.
there's
By show of hands, how many
really
people here, at some point, when they were younger, lived in an apartment? Pretty much everybody, right? We don't have a lot of apartments in Manchester. How many of us, by show of hands, when they lived in an apartment, were criminals? No? Nobody? Okay. We need to have more of that. Ideally, we'd like to ship everybody and transition them to home ownership, but the reality is there's usually a stepping stone. You move out of the house, you get an apartment for a little while, and you build up, and eventually you work into home ownership. We need to be addressing the home ownership lifespan all along its kind of evolution. So we'll be looking at apartments and home ownership options, but the idea is, if I think I'm answering your question, it's to be both. I mean, we'd like folks to be into home ownership, but we also have to provide those kind of stepping stones and provide a diversity of options for folks of many ages. Another problem that Manchester's facing is, as I think we've covered before, we're a very older population. We don't have a lot of younger people, and we need to be more age diverse. I think we don't want to be an entire population of folks 50 and older. We won't have anybody to do any work for us, to be honest. Yes?
I'm just the surveying going on is basically saying that the young people don't want to be here because of lack of opportunities. It's not the lack of housing.
That's right.
Right.
So, I mean, you can build all the housing you want. There's plenty of housing out west. There's whole towns that have absolutely nobody in them because there's no opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if you don't couple housing development with growth opportunities and commercial development, shovel-ready locations which are available,
Like economic development?
Yes.
That's our next workshop.
Awesome.
Yes, okay. I'm glad to know I'm on track. But yes, that is something. We're also looking to try and find ways to make keep Manchester an attractive place to come and live and work, because we're battling an uphill battle with youth like myself. I worked for Bill for a couple of years, and he annoyed me, and I left. And I left and went to go find a job elsewhere.
Good job, Bill.
So, we need to make Manchester more attractive to younger population, and that's not just jobs, but just activities, things to do, and so forth. Yes, ma'am.
I think that bringing people into that area is huge because our downtown core is so quiet at night. The streets are dead. You have people there all the time. The area becomes safer because there's always people out and eyes out and more activity.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot to be said for having housing in that core.
I agree, and the more folks you have living downtown, the more activity, the more vibrant it is, the more eyes you have on keeping things, making sure everything's okay. So, as we progress with this, I want to just get an idea. Would you have any, what concerns might you have with something like this? Yes, ma'am.
What I do like about this is taking current buildings that are already in place that are underused. You know, I think we have this push and pull between building new, beautiful places and reimagining what we already have. And so what I do appreciate about this is really thinking about what we already have so that we're not overbuilding, which is a concern too in our downtown area. And it seems to make sense in that one location too. It has good transportation, which is another, you know, consideration that, you know, the little bit of public transportation we have in Manchester is still accessible in that, you know, corridor there.
Okay, thank you. Yes, in the back.
Sometimes, you know, in our site planning of these things, we don't put solar gain in our considerations of building a roof system and battery storage as well. So I think that should be a strong consideration in models like this. I mean, you're creating a huge roof system. You can get solar gain out of it, and you also probably have some utility space where you could put larger storage capacity batteries in to support things.
Okay. I admit, even as a solar proponent as I am, I did not take that into account with this design. I was too distracted with other things, but that's a good point.
To add on to what the gentleman just said, also in addition to roofs, you can do what Rutland High School did in their parking lot. Instead of creating a garage, you can use those solar arrays.
There is a workshop coming up at the Manchester Library, April 23rd. Thank you. That's going to be I have a slide of this for later, and I was putting a plug for it because they're going to be talking about energy and housing and some very kind of clever and creative things that are being worked on right now that Manchester could and adopt, and they have some examples of how it could be incorporated in MEMS and the airport road development and so forth. So, thank you. Yes, that's a good point. What concerns might you have? Wow, okay, that's pretty good. Traffic, not surprising. For those that said, did anyone say other? I can't see. Did anyone say other? Yes, what was your other?
Just the size. The building on the right, when you had it with the original building, it seemed a little too tall. I don't know if you could put like a hip roof on the side facing the street or turn the ridge a different way.
So with the gable end facing the street, it's
It's high,
yeah.
it's very
Okay.
high.
Good point, okay. Anybody else say
I had
other?
another. If it was going to be mixed use with commercial on the first floor,
Yes.
serviceability to those commercial establishments is in conflict with the living arrangements for people above. Because serviceability would be through back doors, I would assume.
Well, this was laid out, and I probably should have shown a top-down plan. It was laid out so at the ground floor level, you would have retail access in regular increments. So you could have small 1,000 square foot retail spaces, or if you wanted to lease 3 slots, you could lease 3 slots. But all of those would be coming in through the main doors off the courtyard. Again, I didn't work out how some FedEx deliveries might work, but they would park in back and then access each retail space from the inner courtyard.
I assume that, that's why.
Oh, okay. So you feel that would still be a
It'd
conflict?
still be conflict, it'd have to be planned carefully. Because it would be disruptive to the tenants who are occupying it as a residence, and it could be disruptive to getting good service to the retail or the commercial establishments.
I admit I did not go into as much detail as that. My former boss, Bill, would admonish me for not taking that into consideration. These are really meant to kind of give a sense of the size and scale and scope of this, but...
I think the concept's great.
Okay, thank you. Well, you'll be disappointed in it. Okay, concept 2. This shares some similarities. Also, another place you're probably very familiar with. I've always felt this site was just not living up to its full potential. This would be the Manchester Square Shopping Center. Probably most famous because Ben & Jerry's is right next to it, across the street from the substation. Here again, you have a single-story building, large footprint. It does have a pretty good amount of parking. It's awkward site, but a pretty good amount of parking. A nice green space in front that's actually very attractive and makes for a nice entry into Manchester. The main building itself, that rectangle right there, 16,000 square feet of commercial space broken up into 4 tenants of 4,000 square feet. Again, I think about half of it is vacant right now. Those are big spaces to rent, and there's not a lot of tenants out there that need 4,000 square feet. So what if we again were to reconfigure this as a mixed-use opportunity, smaller retail footprints that are all accessible from a front area, if you will, and then try and get the use so this site's being used both during the day when people are shopping, and then at night people come home and they use the parking lot and they live there. So in this scenario, we would be taking this 1-story building here and making it 2-story right here. Again, with a shopping arcade, so all of the retail spaces facing the main street, service and deliveries in back, and then double corridor upstairs for apartments. Again, this represents a much bigger scenario, but I want to get how do people feel on the sort of size and scale of something like this. If something like this were proposed, how would you feel about it in terms of that being redeveloped? Yes, ma'am.
I just know that I would prefer to live in an apartment house than over a store.
Oh, so
Psychologically,
apartments only,
that's right.
no store down
No
below,
store.
right? Okay, it does add complexity. Okay,
And the estimate on this one was 8 apartments.
thank you.
Makes it matter.
Yes. I think that's a low estimate. I think we could probably get more out of that, but I was being, I think, more generous. I was estimating, if I remember correctly, larger footprint apartments, but okay, so generally favorable.
How many, I'm sorry, how many apartments did you say?
I had written down 8 on the slide, although I think that's a low estimate. I think it's probably closer to.
We have a raised hand.
We have a raised hand, somebody from Zoom. Do they just have a written question or a verbal question? Do we trust them that we can unmute? I don't want any surprises.
Robert, if you're there, feel free to chime in. Or you can type it into the chat, and I'll read it.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Did you
Did you
have
want
a
to
comment?
call?
Oh, Robert, you're muted again.
This is why I usually just ask people to type in chat. While we're doing this, okay, so we've gotten that, and now for next, taking it a step farther, we can go by zoning code higher in where this is. If we went 2 stories, get about 16 to 20 apartments Again, it takes on a different character. Interesting to hear. As I said, I knew maybe folks wouldn't like, but I'd like to see how much do you like the size and scale of this. And I'll give folks a minute. Yes, in the back.
I just have a question. Is the idea behind these redevelopments that the town or to somehow we would incentivize the property owners to do something like this?
Well, ideally, but that's outside the extent of my expectation. I would like to understand better what folks in town would like. If this conversation helps to spur some discussion to get folks to be like, hey, this was well received by the community, they liked it, we might be able to make a better profit or find better tenant vacancy, less tenant vacancy, then and that prompts them to pursue that, that would be great. So, but again, I never asked anybody's who owns these properties or asked any permission to do this. So,
I have a question for you.
yes, what's the question?
So, even in the previous version, the building would be higher than the rest of the buildings on Depot Street. Could there be one level of apartments with no retail space?
So, in other words, it's just ground floor residential?
Sounds that way.
Okay. It could, though that's a little awkward. That's prime commercial space that I feel we would not want to necessarily give up. And it might create an awkward situation where you have people living at the ground floor where people are walking. Yes?
I would like to say also that if we put apartments on the ground levels in these locations, it kills the walkability of town. It hurts the tourist. That's a big part of our income in town is tourist dollars. And if they come in, it's just there's no more shops. It's just apartments. Suddenly, there's nothing for them to go to. So we have to keep those spaces as
the lure of downtown or walking around Manchester is often the storefronts and the shopping. And if we put residential on the ground floor, you're going to have closed windows and curtains, and it's not going to feel as welcoming. And you usually want to go up steps to get into that building because now you feel, it's a whole thing. Yes, ma'am.
So I wonder about a traffic study there. That particular location can become fairly congested during peak times. And, you know, it does kind of cry out for a circle there. I know people have different opinions about circles and redoing roads and all those things, but I personally love circles. You know, that particular location, it wasn't a concern where the other one was, but the traffic study there, I think, would be a consideration.
This is an awkward place where Center Hill's coming in right before Richville. There's a lot going on.
Got a lot going on there.
I agree. Let's, oh wait, I jumped ahead of myself here. So, third option.
Can I add to the circle comment? When Manchester was doing the circles that they built, I believe, Ron, maybe you remember, there was discussion about putting a circle, a roundabout in that area.
Yes.
So it's not like we haven't talked about it before.
In that particular place.
Well, that's true. What happened was the state had already appropriated funds for a traffic signal there, and if we had turned it down, we would have been responsible financially reimbursed the state. So we said, oh, the hell, put up the damn light.
A third option that I feel might, I don't want to lead the witness. Instead of having a big building up front, perhaps break it out with two smaller, more residential house size scale buildings at the front of the site, where again you would have ground floor retail and then maybe apartments up above, and then behind that in a separate building, a larger building which would be apartments in the back, making it perhaps more broken up, breaking up the mass a little bit and putting the apartments in back. I wanted to get folks' thoughts on what you feel about that concept.
While you're voting, I will share Jackie's comment.
Okay.
I recently visited Georgetown and stayed in an apartment
very common in downtown Georgetown, and we loved it. Very vibrant. We didn't experience any noise problems. I think young people will like it, old people too, and it got a thumbs up.
Okay, good. Okay, let's see what folks, okay. Interesting. Nobody's neutral on it, that's what I like. Nobody's neutral, yes, in the back.
So, knee-jerk reaction, you know, growing up in the area all of my life, you know, when you put that third story on there, you know, it instantly takes away from the charm of Equinox. You know,
That's right.
as a little kid, I went to my grandmother's on Cass Terrace, and I remember when they put the windmills up, and then a few years later, they took the windmills down. And then they put the windmills up again. And you know, so the circles went. You know, Manchester's always been a place of tourism. It's a posh place. You know, when you start throwing up those 3-story levels, I think you're getting into that view, that charm of what Manchester is.
Okay. Good point. That's why I wanted to do this with photographs. Okay.
I just wanted to point out the building on the right is very reminiscent of a building that is currently very hot in the news, which is Firefly. It is very similar in its structure, its design. So I think it's interesting.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah, I did.
We couldn't hear you in the back here.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that building
Are you pointing the
Looks like the
Yeah.
Firefly.
looks
one
like
that's
the
coming out
Firefly.
very bright white?
Yeah.
Okay. It's he said it's very reminiscent of the Firefly building.
Firefly, thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
I think it looks more elegant without the building on the right. It's a straighter line, it's cleaner looking, but not 3-story, just 2-story.
For the building in the back?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, once again, for each of these I asked, what are folks' concerns? Is it the building size, scale, density, parking? I think some folks have already mentioned. Yes?
I think the height of the building could be mitigated through a setback. You know, one of the things, to your point about, you know, you could have a 3-story building if it was set back further from the road, because the scale of it then would be diminished by the line of sight. So you could have that density.
One more thing.
That includes even the first example.
Okay. Yes.
And I'm Leon Ward, Planning Commission, and we look at this stuff all the time when we're looking at buildings and things and structures in town. And what we do is we compare them to the older town buildings that are already here. And a lot of our old buildings, especially coming into town, like next to RK Miles, that whole strip, they're all 3-story buildings. So this really actually ties in well with what we already have, what is traditional Manchester. If we make a lot of 1-story buildings or just 2-story, they actually look more out of place than the traditional ones.
The historic
So
pattern,
this
right?
this actually fits the historic pattern a little bit more.
Okay. So again, building size and scale is the top priority there. Okay. On to. Oh, sorry. We have a question.
That
Yes.
was a comment that just down the street from that, directly across the street from the old taco house, is a 3-story building that was built in the mid-1800s that has commercial all on the bottom, and the top 2 floors are residential.
What place is that?
Which place?
The one I used to own.
It's the Manchester
was
Variety
Kilburn's
Store.
Market.
Oh, the
Now
variety
it's
store.
They
Yes.
used to run it.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's 3-story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the top 2 floors are residential.
Okay. Well, you guys are all really close. And I picked this site because it's a couple of reasons, mostly related to urban form and character of the area. Obviously, this is a hot button site because of the Valvoline proposal, but I feel it's very important because one of the unique things about this building, the former Chaco House, Firefly, it's built pretty much right up to the corner, as close as you can almost get. And coincidentally, most of the other houses coming in on Depot Street, if you watch, they're all similar pattern. They're all built up pretty close to the street. They're close together. They represent a pattern. They are kind of built right, and this building's built right up to the corner. and it anchors the corner, and that's an important element from just an urban design standpoint. If that corner isn't anchored, the site's going to look bad. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
This side of the street, looking the direction, you're not interrupting that natural landscape that we have as a heritage. You know, I'm not offended by that. You know, is what I'm saying. It doesn't throw me off because there's no equinox behind that. You know,
Right. So in other words, the view shed isn't as critical in that direction.
No, because
Right.
I mean, equinox is one of the things that draws people to this area. You know, there's Mount Equinox. You know, go up Skyline Drive, even though that's not Manchester, it's still part of the draw in this area.
That's a good point.
You know, I'm not objective to that.
Okay. So I feel that unlike the other buildings which were set farther back and had a nice front lawn, this building does the opposite. It comes right up to the corner and it anchors, and I think it's an important consideration when we look at the pattern of buildings all along Depot Street that come in. Here's the Taco House, or sorry, Firefly. They all have a pattern. Most of them all have porches. They're built right up, and it maintains that line until you get to these buildings over here. I think it's important from an urban design standpoint to keep that. And I raise that because if you take these buildings down, this is essentially what the site would look like. You would lose that urban fabric, and you can't rebuild necessarily the way things used to be. Not only is a new development coming in going to look more like this, the Valvoline proposal came in and they were set back far from the street, from the side yards, in part because it's easier for them for the site circulation, but also because our zoning doesn't allow people to build right up to the street anymore. We have setbacks, and in some of these cases I feel that that's a hindrance, it's a mistake, and that's something we should address because we lose some of that fabric. So instead, I'd like to see us be able to build up to the street line and to the corner in some of these cases where I feel it's important. So if we take this building and reimagine it, if you will, as close up to that corner as we can. Maybe it has a wraparound porch to wrap the corner. Maybe leave a little room for a sidewalk. But having two smaller buildings up close to the front of the site with some porches that match the kind of scale of the other houses on Depot Street, and then leaving, because by reducing some of these setbacks, we can also make some more room inside the lot to do other things, for parking and other things. Freeing up some space in the back for maybe a two-story apartment building in the back that might have, say, 6 to 8 units in back, but then we would have, ground floor, maybe there's a cafe with some outdoor seating, maybe some apartments above, something like that. I think that would be more, appealing, and it would try and address some of our, a little bit at a time, some of our housing issues, and I'd like to get a feel from folks, what do they feel about that sort of solution?
Are you asking verbally right now for feedback, or just on this poll?
If you can still vote, I'd like it, but if you want to say something verbally.
I'd be interested to see, and I don't know why I'm thinking about it on this particular site compared to the others, but for this particular site, to replicate what Mr. Miles did with the 3 or 4
The housing units? Yep.
but to somehow condominiumize them so that people could own them on that location.
You just reminded me, I have a photo of the RK Miles housing that I was supposed to put in this presentation this afternoon, I forgot. So we're going to get to a slide that says Miles houses, and I'm going to have to hold up my phone. But thank you.
It would be interesting for this site to see what, I don't know how many of those, I'm going to call them Mr. Miles's properties, if you could get 4 or 5 on this particular location so that it could be lent towards ownership.
Okay, yeah. So, pretty positive response with this. And how much of that is because it's not Valvoline, I don't know. But that's good to know. Again, Do folks have any thoughts on what their concerns might be with something like this? And then we're wrapping up Zone 1, and we'll take just a discussion, take any general thoughts and questions from folks.
What's it gonna take to change the zoning though for?
Well, I would recommend to the Planning Commission, as part of the town plan, that we take a look at revising some of the zoning, maybe adopt something that's more along the lines of a hybrid form-based code.
But is that, because I don't know the rules completely, is that something the zoning, the officials can do, or does it have to go to a town vote?
I see a public hearing.
Public hearing? Okay, thanks, Jeff.
You make it sound simple, but so there's a lot of other sites in the downtown core where we could have done some of these exercises. Obviously, Crystal Palace, but I would imagine that would end up, the form for that might have ended up somewhat similar to what it already is. But I wanted to apply this same logic to the Price Chopper Plaza, to Walgreens, to the site behind J. Crew. There's many other places we can apply this. So in terms of addressing some of the housing, there's, I think, in my opinion, many little areas of opportunity which could happen to address this. And I just wanted to just now open up any just general conversation on this. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a number that you're looking for, or that you think you have to supply?
The state would like us to have a target. I feel like I'd rather work from the ground up and see what we can do, what's reasonable. I'd like to have this basically figure out what the community thinks is right, and then do a grassroots movement up to find out how can we make this work, rather than it being picking an arbitrary number. Maybe it's not arbitrary, maybe it's a hard number. We can count. We need 200 units.
Wow.
But I'd rather figure out how to do it more organically rather than from the top down, if you will.
Yeah, because you'll be in a mess if you need 200 units and you only get 50 people in them. That'll be a tremendous waste.
Right. I agree. Ma'am in the vest, sorry.
Yep, so I've spent time at both the Four Corners and Bennington units that they have built there, and also in Brattleboro, by the Latches Theater, ones that they have built there. And, the ones that they have put real time and consideration in soundproofing make the livability so much better.
Sorry, did you say this is Brattleboro or?
Brattleboro, where they've done a major expansion of their downtown to have, residents above stores. And we may not have the traffic of Four Corners of Bennington, or even right where they are in Brattleboro, but those trucks make a lot of noise. They're stopping and going and stopping and going, and the traffic. And the Brattleboro site seems to be very noticeable when you're sleeping at night, and when you're, it's noticeable. So again, it's just the traffic study, I think, is important for the livability, so people aren't feeling like they're right on top of cars.
Okay. Good point. No offense, you've gone a lot. I'm going to get this lady. Yes.
So, also in Zone 1, but a little bit further out, and I thought of it actually just as I was driving in here tonight, that we have several housing developments that, like coming in, for example, behind Shaw's. And they were all built, they're probably, I don't know, but at some point, if there was redevelopment of those or rebuilding of those, I thought to myself, going up, you could double the capacity as well of those types of places. And they're in the Zone 1.
Yes.
That was just kind of a thought.
Okay. Thank you. Back to gentleman in bandana. I don't know your name, sorry.
That's all right. From my point of view, the thing that's going to drive the bus on housing for people moving into the unit is how much opportunity is created within the area that's reasonable to commute to. I believe I had a discussion earlier at the last meeting with a lady from Habitat for Humanity, and she said she had several units that were available up here, but people wanted to live in Bennington because of the opportunities they had in Bennington.
Right, it's a good point. I don't want to necessarily go through all this trouble of encouraging housing growth if people are just going to drive to Rutland for a job. But, okay. Any other, before we move on to Zone 2, which I think will be more exciting?
I guess, maybe beyond the scope of this workshop, but how do you make sure that the apartments that you have as a concept will be affordable?
Well, that's one question is basically providing either carrot or stick incentives to the developer to say, if you build this, we'll give you some of these benefits if you make a certain number of these affordable based on our definition. The stick approach is if you build these apartments, we're mandating that you have to make 20% of them affordable. And finding the right balance for that is important, and that's something we have to discuss with the Planning Commission and feel what's the right approach. There's benefits to both, but I don't want to necessarily mandate something that might end up being a disincentive to somebody coming to the table. Yes?
So I just need to ask this question. So can you back up one slide, please?
Yes.
Isn't D where where there was a proposal of a building to be built there that was going to be a mix of affordable housing and other units, and that was voted down because there was this not in my neighborhood?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Or flood zone, I thought there was a big argument about.
But what, the flood zone, wasn't it addressed because there was going to be a parking
below
underneath it?
and- yeah.
Yeah, and so that it was raised up?
This
And
is
so-
kind of
community
behind
members.
I know where-
Price Chopper Plaza between and Subway, behind J. Crew.
So what I'm just saying is again, wherever the town selects or people vote on, you're going to be addressing this not in my neighborhood.
Well, that's
If
part of
you're
the reason
getting-
I'm having this discussion.
They're not here today.
They're not here, okay.
To go back to the lady's comment, there was, to your not in my backyard comment, there was great concern, because I was at that presentation, of the type of housing that would attract.
Criminals?
Right, and remember how many of us raised our hands? Okay,
But
sorry.
that goes back to the
Only because
affordability.
We're way behind time.
Yeah, let's go.
Zone 2 here, as I mentioned, the north side basically is North Main Street up to a little past Riley Rink, extending east on Depot Street around East Branch Farms, just shy of Route 7, and then down south along Ridgeville Road, down to about Airport Road, and it curves down, and those pesky closed captions get in our way again. Zone 2, comparatively to Zone 1, generally lower visibility. There's a lot more opportunity where you can build something and it's not in your face, it's not as visible. It has moderate walkability, still semi-walkable, still has water and sewer in almost all areas. But like a residential only instead of mixed use is probably more an appropriate solution. This is where I show you the photograph on my phone. Imagine 3 small but really cute little housing units. I am so embarrassed I forgot to put it in the presentation. But the idea, the concept behind that is having some very small, efficient, compact residential units in like a little cluster, and making efficient use of land space can be very useful. Kind of the cottage court or cottage cluster design, as you see here, this is down south, a little cottage court design that's more for very in demand for aging seniors who are looking to downsize and have a little close community. The basic concept of it is you get a cluster of small little cottages that are centered around usually a common green space or open space to get some of that green space that we talked about in option 1. But they don't all have their own driveways and garages, and in fact, in most cases, they don't. They might have a shared parking lot that they all share, maybe shared facilities for trash and mail, and that makes for a much more efficient package, which makes it less expensive. There's less infrastructure that needs to be built, and that's the general idea. These cottage courts can come in many different quaint sort of styles and sizes, but the general theme is they're often much smaller, more efficient starter homes or downsized homes that kind of create a little community in themselves. The Vermont 802 Partnership Plan, if you're aware of it, is an effort right now to design a series of kind of off-the-shelf modular designs for basic housing structures, much like the old pattern book catalogs that used to be where people could buy a blueprint for a new house and they would buy or build that house. These would be pre-approved for much of their permitting and site plan approvals if this program goes through. And they've developed a series of different compact, efficient designs for, say, a duplex, which they call a paired starter home, which sounds fancier. It's like we're in a trendy menu restaurant. But it's a duplex. It's a two-family duplex like these, which are in Woodstock, Vermont. You can cluster a bunch of these duplexes together in much the same way a cottage court can prepare that idea. Here's one up in Williston, and pair them together much like that cottage court examples that I showed you. And duplexes can take on many different kind of shapes and sizes and characters and styles. So you can fit them into different areas and so forth. And I say that as a lead-up appetizer to concept number 4. In this particular concept, we're looking at a site on North Main Street, just south of Town Hall and Riley Ring, at the kitty corner across from the Vermont Country Store. Right now, the site's about a little over 10 acres. It's a vacant site right now, along the water. It's a little bit, because of its flag lot configuration, it's mostly secluded from the road. You don't really see into it as much. But the idea here, the concept, the design concept here, would be how, since we can't really see it from the road, I'm doing a bird's eye view for this. So we're kind of looking down on the site, but the idea is designing a cluster of different homes, maybe different sizes and scales that might be a duplex or a single or a fourplex that were created in more of a traditional housing village style pattern. And in this scenario, we get roughly 38, 36 dwelling units, I believe, that we're able to work out. This is the general idea, trying to create, rather than a design which is many same cookie cutter, what's it, little ticky-tacky boxes. Instead of that, have some variety in shapes and styles, and it also gets some variety in sort of what families might be living there, from older to younger. And want to get folks, if you haven't put your phones away yet, you probably already have. Get folks' feelings on how you feel about something like that, keeping in mind, you know, the location of the site. It's still pretty much very much in town on North Main Street, and see what people feel.
What would the unit sizes be?
Variety.
This was based on a variety of duplex, singles, and fourplex sizes. I can show you the floor plans to one of them later on in the proposal or the presentation.
But they're not going to be super big.
But they're pretty modest in size, I would say, in general. We have the floor plan for the duplex I had shown a couple of slides ago. I might go back to that real quick because that might kind of, a lot of those were duplexes and I can't advance fast enough. So this is, the duplex is
1150 square, roughly.
1,100 square feet, so 28 feet wide, 50 feet long. So, I mean,
1,000 square feet.
See, I lose my rhythm here. Okay, so generally positive. From a standpoint of concerns, what might folks feel they might be concerned about with something like this? Get some feedback on that. Okay. I can't see again because of the closed captioning.
There's no others.
Did anybody say no others?
Oh, someone just did.
Somebody? Yes.
Like a garden area, a community garden area, because not all of these people that live in said homes would be interested in that. But you hear stories about HOAs, for instance, where somebody wants to have a garden that's against the HOA rules, and this leans itself in that direction, and I think that people should be able to have a patch of land to put a garden in if they're going to own a home.
You can, as of this legislative session.
Great.
Okay.
But I think it should be a conscious effort of thought.
Yes.
I don't like that at all, because it's like a housing development. And I grew up in California, and lovely areas, became housing developments. It reminds me of what happened to the beautiful villages in California.
Okay.
Online question from Robert. So you mentioned in the beginning that the objective was to attract more people to live in Manchester. The ideas are great, thank you. But how do we prevent these new residences from becoming vacation homes?
That's a good question. We're going to dive into a little bit of that. Okay.
So,
Yes.
I have a couple of concerns. One is, they seem a little too densely packed together. I know this is just a concept, but like there's no room for trees around there. Everybody likes shade.
It's California.
And then I want to echo that gentleman who raised the question about solar. It seems that any new home should be oriented to take advantage of either passive solar gain through windows or have the roof such that either south or southwest.
Some municipalities even mandate it.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Again, I admit I did not take that into account when I was doing these concepts. Yes, ma'am.
So if we're comparing like either or in terms of developing the zone 1 and concentrating, or the zone 2, or if we're going to do all of it, it seems like it's just way too much density altogether. And the first concept creates more walking like in the evening, like foot traffic and opportunity for small businesses and cafes in the residential, and just bringing the town to life again.
Right.
But this becomes like a bedroom community, and I like the idea that proposes to bring more life to the center of town.
Okay. In general, I feel like we need to look at what's appropriate in each zone and do, and we're not just picking one zone and say this is where we're going to solve our problem. We have to do, I think, a little bit of everything. The idea is to try and discuss what types of housing do we feel is appropriate in each zone, and try and work toward that. But I do think it's going to take, there's no one magic bullet. The question that comes up often is, can we solve this problem with one big development, or do we need to solve it with many little moves? I tend to feel oftentimes it's many little moves because I feel that would be more inherent with the community. But that's less efficient. To the point about, the gentleman said, these houses all seem very tight and clustered together. There's not really a lot of open space. Yes, that is true. The efficiency of making these more, efficient and affordable is that clustering. So that's what you're giving up. We're trying to make things less expensive to build, and that is the trade-off. So I agree. Yes, sir.
Just to mention up, if you go up 7A, that there is a small cluster that was built there just a couple of years ago. If people want to drive by that to get kind of a sense, I can't think of the name of the development. There's like 8 units in it.
Oh, the James across from Vermont Country Store?
Yes, it's Jameson Flats.
Jameson Flats, I'm guessing you're thinking of maybe?
Possibly, yeah.
Just built in the last couple of years, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are gigantic. Those are huge homes.
Not really.
The next site I want to talk about, I apologize, how are we doing? I can't read the caged clock. The next in Zone 2 is on the east side of Zone 2 right now. We're talking about along Depot Street just before East Branch Farms, kind of still across the street from Arcade Miles lumber storage area. There is this site right here. Again, because of the terrain and the steep slope going up the hill, it's not very as visible from the road. It's about 20 acres in size. You have East Branch, I think, residential development here. These are a series of duplexes. And again, because of the hill going up, it's not as visible. The concept here would be one concept would be a series of duplexes arranged together in a cluster as far back on the site, perhaps central green area. Access to the site could potentially come in from the steep dead-end stub of Elm Street. There might also be a secondary path that would come off of East Branch Road, entry road. And I don't know if it would come in here or back here, but my mind tells me the fire department probably want to have a secondary access to this site just in case the road is blocked and they can't get out. So it might need to have 2 routes in and out, and that might be advantageous. Maybe you want half your people going out and going this way and half the people are going out to that way, but splits up the traffic a little bit. But I want to get folks' thoughts.
Are you thinking these are rentals, or are these like more condo where you're selling, owning? What are you thinking?
That is a good question. I think that could go either way with the duplex. Yeah, it could go either way.
This is almost duplicative of a housing area. I don't know if it was Yarmouth or Falmouth a couple of years ago that caught my attention. Like the whole design.
Dartmouth or Falmouth or?
Yarmouth.
Yarmouth. That makes more sense because otherwise they're in different states. Okay. I went back to slide because I want to see this would be 32 dwelling units. And
those are like condos.
That's what I'm saying.
Behind me.
Right behind.
okay. And then as a counterpoint, another option, because there's more capacity on the site, is looking at more just apartments, apartment buildings that would be accommodated on the site, and that would be 48 units here. Again, this is more rental apartments. I'm only showing one access road out, but that's only because I forgot to add it leaving here. It could also have a secondary access road. I think both would probably warrant it, and see what folks
Could it be
feel
a
about that.
combination?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Could it be a combo of apartments and
Yes.
ownership?
Yes, that's a good point. In fact, there's a lot to be said for that option. Okay, more mixed review here. And then we're almost to the last concept, but find out, get folks' thoughts on what your concerns might be with this one.
Michael, is this giving up farmland for housing?
Potentially, yes. I don't know that it's not active to my knowledge, but it's still viable farmland. Yes. Now, one thing to note is you'll notice there's solar panels on the site already. A few, not many. This site has an incredible southern exposure. With the hill facing down, it would be remarkably useful if you were trying to find somewhere to put solar panels, not just on the roof of this building, but just in general. So something else that sorry, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay.
So this, when I was a young kid, my grandmother was retired, and she decided to move into a unit similar to this in a location called Applegate in Bennington. And at the time, you know, as a young kid, Applegate was a very nice and clean looking community. A lot of retired people lived there. My grandmother was doing fairly well. My grandfather was a retired New York City inspector. You know, she could afford such things. 30 years down the road from then, the place is now less than representable housing. There's a lot of unemployed people that live there. It's not, you know, it's controlled by Bennington Housing Authority, and I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
So,
it's taking a turn for the worse.
When I look at this, I see that in 30 years.
Right. Thank you for that. And lastly, concept site 6. We still have zone 3 to get through, but I want to get through this. This is at the southern end of the zone, off of Ridgefield Road, pretty much just opposite. Here's Union Avenue coming straight down. The wastewater treatment plant's right here, in case anybody wants to go visit. So you have Green Mountain Estates, thank you. I always want to say Green Acres, okay. So you have Airport Road and the railroad tracks here. So this, because you generally can't see this site from the road, it's pretty well screened by a berm from, I believe, the old gravel operations many years ago, and maybe some natural topography. And the overgrown here, I do have, this is kind of the view looking south along the road. It's a pretty well screened site, former gravel pit. So we're going to look at it from bird's eye view, because I don't think my person view would do very much. The idea here would be one of the larger ideas here of apartments, apartment buildings, 42 apartment dwelling units in three separate buildings. Again, the idea of trying to make for some nice outdoor space, minimize the parking around the backs of the buildings, but access off of, basically, I think this is Wallace Drive, right? What used to be Wallace Computer.
Not the farmland.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Okay. So, little closer up view there. Just want to get folks' reaction on this final scenario here. And wow. Okay. Well, things change quickly. Okay. I shouldn't let this results show too soon. I think it taints. People say, "Oh wow, wait."
I think for a historical point, for people that might not remember this, I think years ago, there was a family that had access to that property and they looked at developing it. It didn't go.
What happened to them? Did they just?
Oh, no, they're still in the area. The town said, no, thank you.
Oh, okay. Once again, I did not talk to anybody about whether any of these were good ideas.
No, I
but,
just
yeah.
shared it with,
Yeah, that's fair.
I think some people here tonight might remember. Right, Doug?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to, after the meeting, I want to hear all the dirt. Okay, and so, and then lastly, what concerns you guys might have?
We all know that.
Yeah.
And as I've submitted my answer, where is this in relation to the town's, I call it like the town watershed?
It's in the aquifer.
It's right in the middle of it.
Wait, so the development would, in the middle of it, would sit on it?
No, no.
Well, the watershed comes from both sides of the valley and basically comes right down into the Batten Kill, which is at the bottom of Union Avenue. So it's about as close to, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking that's about as close to the middle of the watershed as you would get.
But it's an allowed use in the,
Yeah.
in the aquifer area, so.
It's an allowed use. Yes, there is an aquifer protection area and wellhead protection areas that are set up around our water sources, which I generally don't divulge the locations of, but you could find if you really want to be a troublemaker. Yes?
Would something of that scale require a traffic study?
Probably, yes. But I'm trying to just gauge folks' general appeal to something like this and see what might be interesting. Yes, you win the award on most comments, sir. Thank you. Well, highest participation, gold star.
As long as they're value comments. So, I don't know if this is one of those shovel-ready areas for commercial development where you could do large-scale manufacturing that would be complementary to Vermont's ideals of manufacturing. Just a personal thought that the scope of this land size could lend use to creating those jobs that would support the housing that's within town. And that's why I had said other.
This would generally more likely be an industrial zoned area, based on history and so forth. And we have, generally, Manchester does not have a lot of industrially zoned land. So if we are looking to attract industries and jobs, we have to be very mindful of that.
So again, that area wouldn't be industrial because of the aquifer protection area. So you have limited use in that zone for residential is the gentlest use of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Anything after that would, could be severely impact the aquifer and the quality of water. That's why they would not be viable for an industrial zone.
Unless it was something complementary to the environment itself.
Oh, yes. I
Because you
think
can
that's
still have
already in the regs.
manufacturing and industrial work that is complementary to what we have. for
There
the
are a
area.
list of qualified.
Right. I mean, I know when we say industry, everybody's mind goes to big smokestacks,
Right.
and we're pumping out plastic and oil and aluminum. But, Vermont thinks,
Right, there could be more clean, sustainable industry.
correct.
Yes,
This is maybe a question that Mr. West can answer.
that's why
Was
I asked.
that parcel included in the acquisition of Green Mountain Estates?
No, it's not.
So that's still owned by the Hayes family?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and it's listed privately currently.
Is what?
It's listed privately. They don't even have, it's not listed with a broker or anything. It's for sale. I think it's
Because
been.
I remember the
Yeah.
expansion, proposal, and when the Hayes had the entire lower field section there as well.
Around the airport.
But, to Ron's point, with natural form having, having the existing industrial parks on either side of it does make for, an interesting narrative in a part of town that, we've become accustomed to developing for the out of sight, out of mind situations.
And, I mean, just another point, I mean, when you start talking about industrial work, you're creating a hedge against poor tourism seasons. For
Oh,
communities.
yeah, you mean hedging your bet against someday the tourists might stop showing up?
Well, I mean, you have poor ski seasons,
Yes.
okay? You have low tourism, you have a bad foliage.
COVID version 2.
It creates a hedge against that, so it doesn't necessarily put the community in a spiral. You have people that are still spending money at the small shops, at the hair shops. They're buying the knickknacks, they're buying the things.
Right. I agree. That's why one of the things that we've been wanting to talk about is just generally diversification of the economy so we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. A couple more things I wanted to discuss, mostly towards Zone 3, but not necessarily. Well, this one's particularly Zone 3. One item to consider, back in 2017, the minimum lot sizes, the zoning was revised to increase the minimum lot sizes for both the RR and the RA districts. Those districts are highlighted on the map shown. They're basically any of the green areas. Hopefully nobody in the audience is upset because they're colorblind there. Apologize, but they're the green areas. They just took away the color for everywhere else. So it's a large chunk of the northern part of town and a large chunk of the southern part of town, anywhere in the valley areas. So the RR district went from 2.5 acres to being a minimum of 5 acres in size, and the RA went from 5 acres up to 10 acres. And I think a lot of this was done in an effort to try and preserve the more rural, natural character of these outlying areas of town, to try and essentially keep them more rural or discourage development. Today, that decision is being revisited, and we're asking ourselves, was that a good idea in light of what we're trying to accomplish with encouraging more housing growth and housing diversity? So one of the questions posed is, should we revert back to those pre-2017 lot sizes and make them smaller again so there's more easy and option to subdivide? The new larger lot minimums, because they were changed, created a lot of pre-existing non-conforming headaches for our folks in the planning and zoning office and for applicants. It causes some issues. And it makes the land more expensive to develop on because you need a larger lot to do anything. Reverting back to those smaller lot sizes would probably result in more housing. But to someone else's point here earlier, toward the beginning of this meeting, it's probably not going to be more affordable housing. It's probably going to be still, you're building on 2.5 or 5 acre lots, you're still probably going to end up with a $500,000, $600,000 house. So it's not really going to address the, sorry, I sort of tone that confused me. It's not probably going to address the affordability issue, but it might. Another alternative to consider is the potential for doing something like what we call a single lot exemption. And that is essentially, if you, let's say, have a 5 acre parcel, here's your house, you have a 5 acre parcel, but the minimum lot size is a 5 acre, you can't subdivide right now. A single lot exemption would be essentially like a one-time offer. You get like a voucher to say, you're allowed to subdivide one time and do something you wouldn't normally be allowed to. So in this case, let's say they would be allowed to just once carve out, subdivide out 1 acre. Perhaps they want to subdivide, create a lot for their family or their grandparents or their kids or somebody or just to whomever, and create a smaller lot. This would be a way of creating a smaller lot than they would normally be able to otherwise create. So it's a one-time, each property owner would only, let's say in those two districts, the RA or the RR, would be allowed just to do this once, and after that, any other subdivision that they did would have to still comply with whatever the minimum lot sizes are. So it would allow the creation of smaller, perhaps probably more affordable lots. It might address the housing issue or the housing affordability issue a little bit, but not a lot. It doesn't solve the non-conforming lot issue. So different options that we're looking at is reducing the minimum lot sizes, reverting them back to those 2017 levels of 2.5 and 5 acres. The other option is pursuing something like this single lot exemption, where we keep the minimum lot sizes where they are, but we allow the property owners there as like a one-time deal, take it or leave it. You can subdivide off a small parcel for family or friends or someone. But after that, they'd have to comply with that. And I want to get, if folks feel, what do they feel about those? Yes, sir.
Who mandated the larger lot size? Where did
I don't know. Whoever was in charge
Did it come from
8 or
Manchester?
9 years
or
ago.
did it-
Sorry?
Was it done in Manchester?
Yes.
Yes.
It was?
Yeah, it was a local zoning decision, yes. But I think at the time, the idea was we're trying to encourage more growth and density in the center of town where we have water and sewer and they can more aptly handle it. We want to necessarily discourage a lot of growth in the outlying rural areas where we want to protect the beautiful town that we have. That was probably essentially the idea. So many hands up. Yes, sir.
Is this option being polled because it's an issue now that's being brought to town government?
No, I think we're just curious. This is something that we batted around internally, just talking about, well, do we want to go back to those lot sizes? Is this, if we're trying to encourage more housing, was this move hindering us?
Okay.
When you say we, who's we?
Myself and folks in the planning and zoning department that I've been testing out some of these ideas on. Yes.
You said that there were a number that are already not in compliance because they pre-existed?
Yes.
And what percentage is that, do you know?
I'd have to ask, maybe, I'm going to put somebody on the spot in the back. Elias, I don't know if you know offhand how many are.
I made a map, it's like 320 some.
It's not a small number.
Yeah,
It's quite a few parcels that are no longer meet the minimum requirements, so.
Now,
Yes.
would there be a restriction? You were saying you could, take an acre for your family. Would there be a restriction, or you could do that and sell it to anybody?
Oh, you can sell it, we can't police who you sell your property to. The idea in a fantasy world is, I'm gonna carve this out and just sell to my kids, or to give to my kids. That's probably not how it most often happens, but you can, in some cases, I've written zoning code for other communities where we mandated if you do the single lot exemption, you're limited to this lot size, and the house can't be any bigger than whatever, I forget what the footprint was, but we limited because we wanted, we're doing this to try and create smaller housing, not 4,000 square foot houses. So we're giving you this option, but we're trying to encourage small houses. Oh, and also you can turn around and then rent it out on Airbnb. So you're prohibited from that option. That's one avenue. Okay. And I put both here as an option. I don't know that we could do both. That might just be a nightmare, but I put both just because it seemed like a nice thing to do. 3 to 4 family units, how are we doing on time here?
It is 7:35.
Okay, we're a little way over time. But back to the 802 Housing for All option. Somebody had asked about the size of some of these units. This is another one of the models they're working on. This is called a Village 4. It's a clever way of designing 4 residential dwelling units into one footprint of a house that looks like these examples here. It looks like any house in any neighborhood, but they've done a clever way of designing it so you get 4 units out of it. You get 1 unit in the front, 2 entrances in the side, and 1 in the back. It just feels more like just a regular house. This particular model is 30 feet wide, 70 feet deep. So, but you're getting 4 houses out of it, essentially. Now, because that's a 4-family unit, 3 to 4 unit dwellings are classified in the current zoning code as being multi-unit dwelling. It's anything with 3 plus units is a multi-unit dwelling. And multi-unit dwellings aren't allowed in many zoning districts in the town. So if we're following in the footsteps of this idea of maybe diversifying the types of housing that we want, a la some of these designs that are being developed by 802, since multi-unit dwellings aren't permitted in several districts, some of them, maybe it makes sense. The R1, RR, and RA that are very rural districts, maybe it's not appropriate, but the MU3, mixed use 3, is one example where you can't do multi-unit dwellings. The MU3 districts are basically north end of Route 7 here, up by the Inn at Willow Pond, right? And I'm always worried I'm going to get that name wrong again. There's a couple of different motels, Aspen Motel maybe, I think, up that way.
Olympia.
And then across the street from the golf course, and then heading up the mountain on Depot Street after you pass Route 7 and you start going up the mountain up there, that area is also MU3 up that way, along the way. Many of the former motels that are up that way. So these are 2 areas where the MU3 district is. Would it make sense do we want to consider either allowing perhaps multifamily in those districts? They're relatively small areas, but they're they're basically commercial hotel areas. Would we want to allow multi-unit dwellings in that district? Or possibly create a new classification for dwellings that are 3 to 4 units? Right now we go single family, 2 family, and anything that's 3 or more is 3 up to 1,000 is multifamily. What if we created an intermediate? So we go 1 family, 2 family, 3 to 4 family is its own thing, and we can allow that in certain areas, and then anything that's 5 and above, that's like an apartment building. But that would allow us to open it up to, yes?
I have a zoning question on this. Is the R4 and the R10 zones that were developed a few years ago, would be multi-units be okay there? And those?
I have no cheat sheet here.
Someone on the,
Unless somebody knows offhand.
yeah, right, the planning commission.
So basically, multi-unit dwellings are in the downtown town center, MU1, MU2, not MU3, which is why I'm raising this question. And then they're allowed in the R4 and R10.
Great, okay, thank you.
And I'm not counting the industrial district because that's... so, two approaches here. One is just allowing multi-unit in the MU3. Another option is creating a new classification of 3 to 4 units that we could maybe allow in other places, because that's not opening the floodgate to a whole 50-unit apartment building, but it's allowing another type of housing in here. I think this is the last thing to vote on. So that's the general idea. Oh, it's not the last thing to vote on. I apologize. You guys mostly want to go home. We're so far behind schedule. I apologize for that, but I would have to have been mean to all of you to stay on schedule, and I don't like being mean.
While you're voting, Thomas West has been listening all along on his drive. But I gotta read the comment now.
Oh, okay.
I did not try not to interrupt you. So, really appreciating what you can say, but really appreciating hearing everyone's thoughts tonight and looking forward to taking all the information
how much more do we got in you guys?
Not much.
Not much, I know. Accessory dwelling units. I'm just gonna jump ahead. They're allowed in the town, permitted by right. You just have to have enough water and sewer to meet them, and they can't be larger than 30% of your main house. How many folks were aware of that option? And then my next question is gonna be, have you ever considered, or would you consider doing an accessory dwelling unit on your property? Okay. Good. So the idea is like, I didn't go through my whole speech. The accessory dwelling unit is basically like an in-law apartment. It's like either an apartment in back or a separate cottage in the back of your home where in-laws used to stay, or maybe you rent it out to a local teacher or something. It's the idea of a small backyard cottage where someone else can live. They're becoming a lot more popular again. They used to be much more popular. And then the second question is, would you consider an ADU, and if so, or if not, why? What would be your concerns? Some people are just like, I don't have a need for it. Other people, I don't want to lead the witness. No need. Yep. Okay. Short-term rentals.
Saving the best for last.
We all know short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, etc. They do bring a very significant amount of money into our area, especially as a more of a tourist destination. But they're also difficult to quantify in terms of what impact they have on our housing situation. They can take away homes that would otherwise be bought by families, and they can also take away rental apartments that might otherwise be rented year-round by folks that just grew up and moved out of their parents' house. So as a first step in understanding this, one of the things that we're considering is setting up a registration system or process as a baby step first before we regulate them and provide limits or rules. Perhaps we should just get a registration system up in place so we have a better understanding of what's out there, how many there are, what types and styles and configuration are they. Are these big houses? Are these small houses? What do you think? So the question is, should the town of Manchester, what steps should we take to address short-term rentals, the impact that they might have? Do we want to consider just the registration, or do you feel that more limitations or caps are necessary? Okay. I'm going to leave the overall discussion up there, but before folks take off, 2 announcements. One, the Smart Housing Local Energy Workshop is going to be taking place at the Manchester Community Library. There's a lot of interesting stuff that they're talking about as ways to harness local energy and reduce our energy costs. It's exciting stuff. It's being held April 23rd at the Manchester Community Library, and it's called Smart Housing Local Energy. They have a couple of guest speakers who are very knowledgeable. And then I wanted to also put in a plug for our final workshop on economic development at Burton Academy, April 29th on Wednesday. And with that, I'll open it up to just general comments. And yes.
I just want to make an announcement. Also, I'm from Habitat, but if anybody knows anybody that is interested in becoming a homeowner, our application cycle is open again for Manchester Housing. So go to our website, send them to our website, call me, seek me out.
Is that for people that, like, are considered, quote, families, or can single people apply? Single people?
Yeah, single people can apply as well. Yeah.
It's income sensitive.
It's income sensitive, yeah, but it's from between 30 and 80%. So if you earn between $40,000 and $80,000, you can qualify, depending on your size of your house. I mean, your family. So just a little plug. Sorry. Just had to.
If you'd given me a slide, I would have put it in.
I know, well, I wasn't ahead of my, I'm sorry.
Any other thoughts, comments? Yes?
Are you doing any workshops on developing new good jobs within the Manchester community?
Well, we're hoping to address that in our economic development workshop coming up later this month. That's really going to be the focus of that, is discussing two types of jobs, two types of businesses. One, small local business, how to incubate and support that, and then also drawing in a larger industry that might be bringing in better, higher paying jobs and technical expertise. That is the types of jobs that might keep people here and provide better incomes. Yes?
When you were talking about the 5 acre to a one-time chop off an acre,
right?
I think some considerations should be involved with that. There's some well requirements distance or septic system requirement distance and wetland and river corridor considerations that should be applied to that zoning consideration.
Yes. And another thing that we often do is, because let's say you're in a 5 acre district and we let you, my house is on one of these lots. 5 acre or 10 acre zone. You allow somebody to make a 1 acre lot, but you still have 10 acre zoning setbacks. You can't build anything. So we often adjust the setbacks for those lots so that you can't have 100-foot setbacks on a lot that's 200 feet wide. You can't build anything. So that's also taken into account.
Okay.
Yes?
So someone made a point earlier about what's the number? And you talked about developing something from the bottom up rather than top down. I don't think that's necessarily...
It sounded good at the time.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the right approach.
Okay.
I think if we understand what the need is, all right, current and what's projected, then we can shape our zoning bylaws and our systems to encourage to meet those needs and beyond. And the other thing too is, these are concepts, so sometimes we get hung up in the minutia of the concept rather than embracing it, that it is a concept. And so in that respect, taking these concepts and how do we encourage the town to, through either regulations or through funding mechanisms, what have you, help to achieve those goals with the concepts that have been presented. It's not as if everything's going to happen at once. We're talking something that might take 10, 20 years to really flesh out to a point where we think, well, we're saturated. All right, so I think sometimes we get too caught up in the minutia of the concept rather than embrace the concept. But knowing a target.
Yeah. And I think you said this, but the target that was presented as through the housing needs assessment for Manchester, not including the village, was 200 units over 6 years. And that's of varying sizes, shapes, and everything. If you include the village, I think that includes an additional 50, so 250. And that was based on the ability to build, access to infrastructure. I'm thinking also with the 4-unit fourplexes. Yeah. That also gets you under thresholds for the state as well in terms of Act 250 sometimes. So there's advantages to that number. And I think you said something important, which is that, like for the Airport Road project, there might be a plan 20 years down the road to have 250 units of housing. But it doesn't mean that all 250 are going to be developed at the very beginning. But you might have the capacity if you needed it. So that's your from the bottom up, piece by piece, phase by phase.
And when we're just basing it on capacity, I don't think that reflects the need. It just, there's a push to address our housing issues nationwide and the state and county level. So they're often looking at, well, okay, which community can we lean on to say, oh, you guys have capacity, we need you to make up for the fact that these other communities maybe can't.
And if we have the capacity and can prove it, what is the big deal?
Yeah.
What is the state going to do to help us achieve that objective?
Chip?
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's a hollow mandate, or,
It's I think a lot of it's unreasonable or unrealistic.
yeah.
But it could also emphasize, yes, you know, they say we need 200 or we need 250. It's not a mandate, it is in fact a target, but it's to say this is also to potentially validate the need, right? That it may be beyond our own capacity to build. So what other changes or mechanisms and levers do we need to also change to affect that final outcome?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I wanted to share one note from online, and I'm saving in chat for you too.
Yeah.
So just coming back to the question about creating opportunities so that people will want to move here. Saying that if Airbnbs are restricted, the concern with tourism then coming down and job opportunities as well.
That's something we consider, obviously. But my personal feeling is we can test some things out and see how.
Yeah, there's a difference between restricting and saying that none of that and having something in place to manage.
Did you do that?
Okay. I want to let some folks go. Yeah. 2 more questions. You guys can go. It's okay. But you, sorry.
She mentioned tourism, but it's important to note, similar to what happened tonight, which I think is grossly misfortunate.
Okay, let's talk outside.
That there was an MBA event the night we're talking about housing, when apparently the business community has said, we need housing. They are somewhere else.
Yep.
The 29th is the last day of the State Tourism Summit. So most of us with skin in the game will be celebrating each other and our industry an hour and 20 minutes away.
You might want to change the date.
I'm not saying, I'm just, you know, this is how it happens. But when we want as many stakeholders in the room as possible to talk about the economic sustainability of our community, we need to make sure that everybody is on board. And
This was brought up, but it was out of our control
that
at the time.
Yeah, you know, it's our Chamber of Commerce and the MBA.
Yeah.
So, one more comment on economic development. When you consider what America did, why did people come here? They came here for opportunity. There was no housing. There was forest.
There were no roads.
There were no roads. Okay. When people started mining the oil sands in Canada, there was no housing. There was only industry. People moved to the northern part of Canada to make money. Then they brought housing.
In the chicken egg question of housing and economic development, you're arguing the economic development comes.
It never happens the other way. Look at the houses out west, the cities and the towns that are absolutely vacant and desolate. There are perfectly good houses, streets, roads, signs, municipal buildings, and they're totally desolate because there's no opportunity.
I think to that point, though, there is a current need.
We already have a need.
I don't argue there's a need. However, sustaining past the $25 an hour house need, okay, getting past that need of like, let's take care of the people that take care of the groceries and cutting the lawn and repairing our houses. What else are we going to do to hedge against things that don't work all the time? Okay, when we see tourism drop, what's our hedge against that? And this is why I'm suggesting we move a little bit more into some type of an industry that benefits the community.
I'm there, brother. I think,
you know,
I occupy a significant amount of space at a local industrial park, and I would like to see more options for companies like mine.
So I don't lose the opportunity. I want to thank everybody for coming. So most of you snuck out, but Mr.
I
West.
just want to say thank you to everyone again, and we can do both. We need to attract more people to our communities. And I think it's a really important reminder that there are a lot of people here already who are incredibly insecure and can't find the housing that they actually need, and we're on the verge of losing them. People you know, personally, they live here right now, and if we don't continue to build in different ways, we will lose them. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what I do, still.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Emily.
You're on still.
Yeah. Always, but thank you to the folks on Zoom. We're going to be shutting down here.
When they have the event, you still come to the right event.